Blessings, everyone. This is Reverend with the Four Pillar Shrine, and today I would like to talk a little bit about Wiccan ethics and Wiccan virtue. And for those of you who have been watching some of my shows, watching some of my videos, you probably know that I have a little bit of a soapbox, and so sometimes when I'm doing these videos, I come across a little bit. I'm not saying I'm judgy, but I definitely have a little bit of a soapbox, and I do want to apologize about that. The Four Pillar Shrine, we very much try to be very open in our views, but I guess it stands that I'm going to have some personal opinions that are going to be that seep through my videos. So I do apologize for any of that, and I certainly mean no offense to anyone. These videos are meant formally to be informative to most people. Now, there are most people that are probably not going to find most value in these videos because they are things they already know. But for those of us that don't really have a lot, these videos I hope will really be important to them. I know when I was growing up and I was first becoming interested in Wicca, I was having a very hard time finding things. I had two books, and I had those same books for years and years, and one book wasn't even like a Wicca 101 manual. It was actually just like a BOS. So it was, it was very difficult for me to find good materials. And so I hope that, now in this age of internet and things like that, that hopefully these materials are going to be able to reach people and be very beneficial to them. So I certainly hope that happens. As I said, I wanted to talk today about Wiccan beliefs, ethics specifically, and virtues. And so let's talk about it. So the first thing that I want to actually talk about is the Wiccan Rede, the Rule of Three, and karma. Now, these are some of the basic beliefs and the building blocks of Wicca that we find in every single tradition of Wicca, regardless of what specifics you might have, what bent, what pantheon, what idiosyncrasies each tradition might have. And karma, I'm sure I've mentioned this before, is a Sanskrit word, and karma means work or action. And so you find something like karma yoga. Karma yoga means the practice of work as a way to find God or to reach God. So that's kind of the whole basis of the idea of karma. And of course, as we know, karma is this idea of cause and effect. What you do is sending out ripples in a pond, which then ripple back to you and affect you. And so it's really important that we understand that our actions have consequences. Our actions have oftentimes unforeseen consequences. And it's important that we understand and we are responsible in our actions. And in some groups, they believe that thoughts are just as powerful as actions because thoughts are energy, and that energy is being sent out into the universe inadvertently because of just the very fact that thoughts are energy and they are going to be rippling out. In some traditions, they don't necessarily think that. In the Buddhist tradition, I found that in some traditions of Buddhism, they don't believe that thoughts are necessarily a bad thing. It's all about intent. If you accidentally do something and you didn't intend to do it, you're not accruing negative karma or negative merit. If you did something intentionally, you became angry, you lost control of yourself, and you did something intentionally, then that's when karma begins to really play a role and you become very seriously entangled in your karma. So just some things to keep in mind about that. Also, the Wiccan Rede, as we know, is the basic building block of Wicca, and so I have my BOS here with me, and you see on second page, the Wiccan Rede. There it is. I think it's backward to you. And this is second page. This is really important. This is the foundation of everything that it is to be a Wiccan. We can worship the old gods and we can do whatever, but if we're not following the Wiccan Rede, then to be a Wiccan, to me, it's just not possible. But at the same time, do I think that somebody who might not be so active in rituals and whatever, but they're following the Wiccan Rede, does that mean that they're a Wiccan? Yeah, it does, you know. At the very most essential, basic need, you are a Wiccan because you are following the Wiccan Rede. And the most important aspect of the Wiccan Rede is the sentence at the very end. 8 words the Wiccan Rede fulfill, and ye harm none, do what ye will. And what that means is, as most of us probably know, because this is Wicca 101, of course, is that what you do, you may do, so long as you harm none. And the Correllian tradition tells us that the word harm is a word which we need to understand in the basic sense. Excuse me. And we don't need to apply all of these hard and fast applications to the word harm. Oh, does it mean harm that you are driving in a rainstorm and there might be worms on the road? Is it harm that in the same instance there might be frogs on the road? I love frogs so much. Frogs are my favorite, animal, and one of my favorite animals. And so when it rains, I'm really careful, and I try not to take the back roads when it rains because I don't want to hit those little things. So, but am I intending to do it? No, I'm not. I'm not intending to murder helpless, cute little frogs. But we have to take it in stride and understand that too strict of an application of the word harm is actually harmful to us, because then we can't live our lives because we are practicing such a strict form of nonviolence. There are some religious traditions that do, some ascetics in India, in Hinduism, and also some Jains in Jainism and Sikhism. They perform very, very strict forms of nonviolence, and they pretty much, I don't want to say that they don't have lives, because these people are living saints, to use the word, basically. But understand that they, really can't work because certain types of work could be seen as harmful. They can't really do much, and so they live, very much by themselves. And in some cases, these people will have a broom that they sweep the ground before they walk to make sure they're not stepping on any animals. They wear a mask over their face so they don't breathe in any insects that might be flying in the air, because they want so strongly not to hurt anything. So again, that idea is a little bit extreme, I think, in the West, and it really isn't pertinent to the purposes of Wicca. Now, if you choose to take it in that direction and you're completely fine living in that very strict and life of nonviolence, I commend you, and I thank you for your choices. But for most of us, that's a little bit too strict for our daily normal lives. And so understand that the idea of harm is one that is relative, and it's the basic idea of harm. So, and ye harm none, do what ye will, is the basic idea of harm. That means, harming purposefully, hitting people and killing things and things of that nature, making it so people, are detrimental to their living. So without beating a dead horse, no pun intended, harm is a relative term. So we follow the rule of "and ye harm none, do what ye will." Also, the third thing is the rule of 3. And I talked before about this idea of karma, and what you send out is rippling back to you. And so the rule of 3 in the Wiccan tradition is basically that idea. The idea that what you send forth comes back to you. And the saying is, what ye send forth comes back to thee, so ever mind the law of 3. So, being aware of the fact that whatever you do, when the ripples come back, they start out small. When you drop a stone in the pond, the ripples start out small and they expand, and as they expand, they get larger. And then when they reach the edge of the water and they come back, they're even bigger. And that is the analogy that needs to be used to understanding the rule of 3. When you come back, you're getting larger ripples that are coming back to where you dropped that stone. And what that means is that your effect is amplified in the universe, in the world that you're living. And then when it comes back to you, it's causing more good or more bad, always more. The Correllian tradition uses the word 3 to mean plurality, not to mean figuratively. So it's not 3 times exactly, but it's multiple times. You know, it's coming back to you in greater than what it was sent out. So always be aware of that. If you were sowing good, if you were sending out good, then more good is going to come back to you, and your life is going to be blessed for that. So be aware of that as well. So those are the 3 basic ethics that Wiccans really use to live their life by. The Rule of 3, the Wiccan Rede, and karma, the idea of karma, which of course is also intrinsic in the Rule of 3. So those are the 3 basic, principles of ethics in Wicca. But I also want to talk in the next segment about different principles as well that we can kind of really overview gather from this practice. Idea of virtues. Now, a virtue is kind of like a positive trait that you have that is positive. It creates positivity. The virtue is opposite of vice, which is, as we know, a trait that we have which becomes harmful or detrimental to us. Often that vice is something that is either addictive or something that has been so on our mind, it has really captured our mind and our focus, that it's become such a vice, it's become so negative. And I'm sure at the same time, virtues could be the same thing. You could be overly modest to the point where you are alienating people. You could be overly generous to the point where you become so unable to live that it's detrimental to you. So, but as I said, oftentimes vices seem to be things that really take our attention, grab our attention, and take us away to something more negative and detrimental. So there are several different virtues, and the Correllian tradition talks about the idea that Aristotle also had his idea of certain virtues. And in the one thing that most of us have probably heard about is what's called the 9 noble virtues. And the 9 noble virtues actually come from Norse paganism. And back in the 1970s, there was a gentleman named John Yowell, and John Yowell was a member of the Odinist Rite, which is a branch of Norse paganism in the United Kingdom. And what he did was he created a lot of literature as basis for the Odinist Rite, or Odinic Rite. And so he actually formed what is now most frequently practiced today as the modern Odinist Rite. So that's really interesting to note. And what he did was he made his own 9 noble virtues, which was a list of 9 things that he felt were really important for every heathen, every Norse pagan practitioner to be able to do. And the story goes is that he actually looked through a lot of the Eddas and a lot of the old stories and the sagas and things like that, and he came up with his 9 noble virtues from looking at ancient literature. So he used that as his basis, and now a lot of other neo-pagan groups are taking these ideas of the 9 noble virtues, and they're applying them to themselves. And so you find mention of the 9 noble virtues elsewhere in the pagan world, and in the neo-pagan world as well. So, of course, it's very popular in Norse paganism, so you have a lot of other branches of Satru, the Odinic Rite, other Norse groups are using these 9 virtues as well, and you find them in print very often. So that's one thing to note, very interesting. And there's another thing which I think is really interesting, and I haven't heard it really mentioned too much. Again, going back to my Book of Shadows here. In the Charge of the Goddess, at the very end, in the second part of the Charge of the Goddess, I just want to read it to you. It says, the goddess says, "For my worship is the heart that rejoices, and behold, all acts of love and pleasure are my rituals. Therefore," important, "let there be beauty and strength, power and compassion, honor and humility, mirth and reverence within you." And those are eight sort of virtues, sort of qualities that I've seen Not very frequently, but I've seen other Wiccan groups take these ideas and use them kind of as a basic template for the virtues that they feel that Wiccans um, should try their very best to bring into their lives. So again, just kind of reviewing, I'm just going to talk a little bit about beauty. Let there be beauty. Um, and I think that obviously we know that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And beauty doesn't necessarily have to be physical beauty. Beauty can be spiritual beauty. Beauty can be personal internal beauty. We know that beauty is not just a physical thing. And it's not saying that, oh, well, you're not totally gorgeous, so you can't be a Wiccan. No, that's not what it's saying. It's saying that um, I think that part of beauty is being graceful, having grace, having decorum, having having self-respect, having the ability to behave positively, beauty. So I think that's really important. The second virtue that they talk about in the charge of the goddess is strength. And again, we're not referring to the idea of physical strength. We're referring to the idea of um, all sorts of different types of strength. And we know in the Correllian understanding of the 7 archetypes that there's maiden, mother, and crone. Crone, obviously, and then there's also sage or ancient one or sorcerer. So understanding that all of the aspects, all of the archetypes of the gods are strong in their own way. And obviously, the crone and the ancient one, sage, that sort of thing, sorcerer, they're strong in magic. They're not necessarily physically strong. They're strong in magic. They're strong in wisdom. They're strong in knowledge. That type of strength is important too. Necessary. It's important. And that's important to understand too, that in that second understanding, that second virtue that's outlined in the charge of the goddess, that strength in those ways is just as viable as in other ways. The third virtue that's outlined in the charge of the goddess is the virtue of power. Now, I think that power, when they're talking about power, they are talking a little bit about strength, excuse me, but in a different sort of way. Excuse me again. They're referring to power, I think, in terms of influence, how you can relate with other people, how you can work with other people, how you can, through your coven, your shrine, your temple, whatever, be able to exert your power, your authority over other people. And it's not necessarily in a manipulative way, but I think it's in a constructive way. Having power, having the ability to be a Wiccan and be able to do what you do and not have to apologize for it. Being self-respectful and being self-confident, I think, is different than strength. It's being powerful, being able to be dynamic, to be able to be a mover and a shaker and an influencer. The fourth virtue mentioned in the charge of the goddess, I think, which is always always very important, is the virtue of compassion. Beauty and strength, power and compassion. And these are opposites. You can be beautiful and graceful, but you can also be strong. You don't have to be weak, a pushover. You can still stand and be strong, and at the same time be graceful and have self-dignity and decorum. You can be powerful and influence other people and be constructive, but that power can be negative. So balancing it with compassion and understanding that people are different, and in our groups, in our covens, in our temples, in our shrines, we have to understand that compassion is deeply important, and we have to be compassionate to one another. We have to be compassionate to our shrine. We have to be compassionate to our tradition. And we have to understand a little bit about what people are going through and take the time to really understand that. You can influence people all you want. Power is active. Compassion is passive. you're sending it out, but also be able to receive, also be able to listen, also be able to have compassion for others, and also be altruistic, want to help others, want to be a benefit to society. That's also deeply, deeply important. The next virtue is the virtue of honor. And honor, I think, is kind of a sticky one for me, because a lot of people would tell you that honor isn't something that you just have. It isn't something that you just say, I'm honorable. No, honor is something that you work for. Honor is something that you are given by the community that you are in. We talk about maybe an aged king or queen, or we talk about maybe the village wise woman or cunning man. They were respected because they were honored because of their work, because of their importance, because of who they were. So honor is one of those ones that I think is going to be difficult to really practice, because it's something that you need to understand doesn't come. You are given honor, you are awarded honor based upon your actions and your deeds by society, by your group, by your shrine or your temple, and even the Wiccan community at large. And so having that in mind, it's important to understand what you might be able to do in order to garner that honor from your community. And of course, Wiccans in general are going to have a different sense of what it means to be honorable than what secular society might say. Secular society might say that given your high level of college degrees and your ability to work as an important person in society, like a lawyer or a doctor, you might be honorable then because you have got to a position where you are giving back to society and you are you're being helpful. And so I guess in some ways being able to garner honor and to gain that is through giving back to society. Being the type of person that is, again, altruistic, is there for others and is working with others. And so being honorable, again, is not something that you may ever, so I guess in some ways it's similar to fame. It might be something that you may never earn in your life. But after you die, you might very well become the most honored spirit, a beloved ancestor, whatever. So that's really important to understand. And again, that's my opinion on the matter. I'd like to hear other opinions, if anyone has them, about how someone might get honor or practice honor or have honor as a virtue. However, it is something that I think is something that you are given by society. The next virtue being that of humility. Now, honor, I guess in some ways, again, would be more passive. It's something that you have to go get. You got to earn. Humility is something that you feel. It's something that you open yourself up to be. And of course, we know humility being humble. And this is one that I think some people get tripped up on too, because I think it's important to understand. And going back to, the beginning of my studies and reading some of, my early study material, learning that titles and certificates and, positions of authority or rank do not make you a Wiccan. They do not make you somebody who, is important, self-important, just because you are. So having humility and understanding that as if you are in the position of clergy for a second or third degree, we are given the opportunity. We are given the privilege. We are given the privilege. We're not giving other people the privilege. Our community is giving us the privilege of serving them as their clergy. I have a double bachelor's degree. I'm studying in the Correllian tradition to get my third degree. And all of my hard work hasn't been for me so that I can sit back and be like, oh, look at me, I'm so awesome. No, my hard work has been for my community. The whole purpose of my work has been to legitimize and credit myself so that I can be of use and help to the community. And the community has given us that ability to be able to do that. They are allowing us to lead them. They are allowing us to provide spiritual service for them. So we have to be humble, because 5 years ago, we were in the same place. 10 years ago, we were in the same place. 15 years ago, we were in the same place as these outer court members are now, or these first degrees are now, or these second degrees, or whatever. Or if you're in a different tradition aside from the Correllian tradition, any. And so it's important to understand that at the end of the day, and we know this, we all know this, as Wiccans, we know that at the end of the day, when our spirit goes back to the Summerlands, goes back to the other world, goes back to the spiritual realm, that these experiences we're taking with us, but when we get there, we're not going to be any better than any other spirit. We're not going to be any higher than any other spirit. We're not going to be any more advanced than any other spirit just because we did all these things on Earth. We're getting these experiences, and we're given the opportunity to have these experiences, and we should be humble about that. And I am all for learning. I think that everybody should learn everything, and everybody should be as smart as everybody else. I am a child of the education system, and learning has always been deeply ingrained in me. And I think that learning for the sake of learning is important enough. And so I know that there are a lot of people that are learning for the sake of learning, and they don't necessarily want to rub it in anybody's face. And that's perfectly fine too. That's perfectly fine. But understand that, we have to be humble. That's what's going to create a positive relationship with our community. And that's what's going to help our community to grow. By beating everybody down and treating everybody badly is not going to get you that honor. I don't think necessarily that honor is opposite of humility, but again, honor is active and humility is passive. And so we're not going to gain that honor from others, from our community, from ourselves, if we don't treat other people with respect and kindness. And I know that we all know this, and I know that this isn't new, but I definitely think it's something worth mentioning, especially if the Charge of the Goddess thinks it's important to mention. Being humble, practicing humility, being able to rub elbows with, as the saying goes, saints and sinners alike. Because that's what, not to Christianize the conversation, but, to be able to do that and not be affected by it, and be humble and be who we are. The last two virtues mentioned in the Charge of the Goddess are probably my most favorite ones. So again, I'll read it again as the saying goes. Therefore, let there be beauty and strength, power and compassion, honor and humility, mirth and reverence. So the last two virtues mentioned in the Charge of the Goddess are mirth and reverence. Excuse me again. And mirth is, I don't want to say it's an archaic word, but it is kind of a not often used word these days. But I think that mirth is probably the best word to use to describe what it is that the Charge of the Goddess is really trying to convey. Mirth has several different meanings. It means joy. It means cheerfulness. It means, kind of being able to enjoy the experience in a positive way. So it has kind of multiple layers to that. And as Wiccans, understanding that life is a spiritual journey, and understanding that negative things are going to happen. We are going to make mistakes, and karma is going to come back. That is the nature of the world in which we live. And we have to be lighthearted about it, and we have to be joyful about it, and we have to be cheerful about it. I'm not saying that we need to smile in the face of our enemy. Okay, maybe a little bit. I'm not saying we need to smile in the face of our someone who's hurt us or someone who's attacking us, and be self-sacrificing. But what I'm saying is being able to be open and honest and happy and joyful and understand that the world is created in compassion, and it's sustained and it's continued through the compassion and through the love of the Lord and the Lady. And negative things are happening, negative things do happen, but understand that it's not personal to you. God or goddess or whatever deity, whatever neutral term you want to use, is not out to hurt you, is not out to get you, is not trying to find and focus on you and make you pay for something or make you hurt for something. Now, understand again of karma, but understand that the goddess and the god are our spiritual parents, and that their love and their compassion is what's sustaining and creating the universe always and forever. And we are living in a very exciting time. Every life we have is an exciting time. Every incarnation we have is an exciting time. Because we're able to experience that, and we're able to see the compassion of the Lord and the Lady and the love of the Lord and the Lady always and forever in our lives. And as soon as we're able to recognize that, we will be able to have mirth and have joy and have cheerfulness in our lives, and not allow ourselves to be so wrapped up in self-pity and self-loathing and self-disrespect and things of that nature. And so mirth, I think, is really fun, and it's something that we often forget about ourselves. And that, of course, we all know that old saying, all work and no play. Being able to be compassionate, not just with others, but also with ourselves, and not taking ourselves too seriously, and having some mirth in our lives. The final virtue is, to remind myself, because I've forgotten already, reverence. Reverence. That's an interesting one. Reverence. Mirth isn't exactly foolhardy. Mirth isn't exactly a loose cannon. Mirth isn't exactly meant to be a free-for-all. But of course, it has the potentiality to do that. You could take life so less seriously, so little, that you just mess off all the time. And again, kind of illustrating the idea that both of these pairs are kind of opposites or balancing. Reverence, I think, is kind of the balance on mirth, because yeah, you can have fun and you can whatever, but then you also have reverence. There has to be a time when you stop, when you open, when you think, and when you pay reverence to yourself, to your higher self as an emanation of the divine, and to the divine as a whole. And understand that one of the bases, is that a real word? I don't know. Of Wicca is that we believe that the universe is God. God is the universe, but God is outside of the universe as well. God is both. It's called panentheism. And I talked about that in one of my other videos, panentheism. So with that being said, everything that we do in life is possible. It's possible to revere it. If you go back and you look at any pantheon, Indo-European pantheon that has become the basis of Wicca over time, and other neo-pagan groups, any pantheon, you will find a god for this, a god for that, a god for this, a god for that. And just some basic, ideas. Oh, the god of the kitchen. During Chinese New Year, they actually have a deity that they give reverence to for the Chinese New Year celebration, whose name is the Kitchen God. And we, in our shrine, in our home, we have a picture of the Kitchen God. And surprisingly, I actually have his altar set up today because I'm just about to send him back to heaven. This is the Kitchen God right here. And the Kitchen God hangs in our kitchen. And so obviously it's important to understand that the work that is done in kitchens has been seen in most cultures as being something that is important. It's being something that sustains your life, sustains your household, and so the work that is done in the kitchen is important. So they have deities which, to use the word, personify the importance of those activities. Similarly, there are a lot of different deities for various home activities and home work, in terms of weaving, sewing, that sort of homely activities. Of course, the goddess Athena in ancient Athens was, of course, the goddess of weaving and spinning, and of course, the whole origin of the story of Arachne and Athena. And so you can go back and look at a lot of different things, and you can see that different aspects, different things have different deities associated with them, because these are important things that sustain our lives. And so even though we might feel sometimes out of sync, understand that a lot of what we do is holy because the universe is holy, and everything in the universe is holy. So even when we feel like we might be disconnected from God, or gods or goddesses or deity or whatever phrase you'd like to use, understand that everything that we do in our lives has in some way been sanctified by somebody. So understand that, something as simple as washing and bathing has become a severely religious act for some people, and you can use it as a way to communicate with deity. And so stopping, thinking, being reverent about your life, and taking something that you do in your life and allowing it to bring you back to a spiritual center and allow you to have reverence. And I don't think that the term reverence used in this is the strict term of, okay, going and praying and worshiping and that's it. No, I think that having reverence in your daily life all the time, just as you would with mirth. You have mirth all day long, every day, but also being able to stop and have that reverence every single day too, and understand that you are part of a religious community, you are part of a community, a geographical community, you are part of so many different communities, and understanding also that you can be reverent, and think and remember about those things, and remember what it is and what it means to be a child of the divine, what it means to have the spark of the divine within you in terms of yourself and your higher self, and be reverent for that, and take a moment to stop from your play and pray. So those are kind of my takes, my understanding on the 8 virtues which are listed in the charge of the goddess, and I would encourage everybody to go back and pull out their BOS and read their charge of the goddess and go through it, and maybe even keep the things I've said in mind, and think about what the goddess means when she refers to these things, and what it means to us as practitioners of Wicca, and how we can take hold of that spiritual strength, beauty and strength, power and compassion, honor and humility, mirth and reverence, and we can take control of those things and apply them to our lives. And I'm sure there are many other extrapolations you can take from these 8 aspects, and I would love to certainly hear your take on it. If you have any other takes on what you think these mean, of course it's certainly open for interpretation. Dorian, the author didn't give us footnotes, so it's important that we have these discussions and we understand what it means in our community, because our community won't be taken seriously, and our practice won't become I don't want to say legitimate, but our practice won't seem credible to outsiders if we aren't able to take ourselves seriously and to really think about the philosophy and the inner workings of our faith and allow it to flourish, grow, and blossom. So I thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in and listening to my rant. And until next time, signing off for now.